This lecture is about network effects, and network effects arise when in a communication system, for example telephone networks, users derive value from the presence of other users in the network. So this would be a situation where my benefits from the telephone network are increased when there are more people, family, friends, colleagues, business partners are in the same communication network. So that's the network effect in very simple terms, and that's the direct network effect. So value to users increases with the number of other users in the system. That creates a positive economic externality. So in terms of microeconomics, we have an externality where I benefit from the presence of other users, but I have no way of paying for them to join the network or compensating for the benefits that they create for me. This creates the Metcalfe suggested a law, heuristic, that suggests that the value of the whole network is proportional to the square of the number of users. So that means that the value of a communication network grows exponentially. There are also indirect network effects, and those arise when I don't necessarily, as a user, I don't care about the presence of other users in the network, but I care about complementary goods, which may be content or maybe applications or just complementary hardware that need to be consumed together with the communication or with the network itself. So an example would be operating systems and applications. So if I decide to buy a Windows system for my computer, then I also care about the number of applications that are available. Or choosing between Android and iPhone cell phone systems, people would think about the applications that are the apps that are available for each of the systems and compare the benefits from these complementary goods. This creates a positive feedback effect. So even though I don't care about the other users, I benefit from the presence of other users because they make the market more appealing to the creators of applications or these complementary stuff. So indirectly, I would benefit from the presence of other users. So that's why we call it an indirect network effect. Both types of network effects create this positive feedback, where more users creates more benefits, which then attracts more users. So a larger installed base will be more attractive to users who have not yet joined. So the network becomes more and more attractive to additional kind of marginal users. But conversely, if the network is small and installed base, few people have adopted, installed base is small as well, that makes the network very unattractive, and it can work both ways. So let's look at the dynamics of the network growth a little bit. So when users care about the number of other users or the amount of complementary goods that are available, then they make purchase decisions based on both the price and the features of the good itself and the expected size of the market or expected level of supply and expected number of other users in the marketplace. So this creates two important things. Critical mass becomes critical for the product or for the innovation to take off in the marketplace. And it creates a market that is likely to tip, meaning when you have competing products in the marketplace, if the network effects are strong, then it's highly likely that one or the other only one will survive and the other one will disappear from the marketplace. So then we have a network, we have a demand curve that is a little bit unusual in that it's not monotonically, it's not declining monotonically, but it's actually inverted U-shaped curve. So we have users who care not just about the features of the product, but also the size of the marketplace. So if we assume that users have a kind of intrinsic valuation VI for the product itself, And then they also care about N, the size of the market. And this VI is distributed uniformly across we can line up all the users based on their, or order on all the users based on their valuation of the product, the intrinsic valuation. And on top of that, they care about the size of the market. Then if we do a little bit of math, we end up with a quadratic demand curve. So we have P, or the price for the product, will depend on the distribution or the valuations of individuals for the product, and the N, the size of the market, in a quadratic way. And it's an inverted quadratic form. So then when we look at the demand curve, early on, most likely the kind of geeks or very enthusiastic users will adopt the product. They care a lot about the product and less about the number of users in order to be able to adopt. So they really value the product. Those people will adopt or buy the product initially. And later on, when the market becomes larger, even people with lower valuations for the product itself will buy it because the network size already kind of induces them to jump in and buy the product. And then once the whole market has adopted, all the users who have positive valuation for the product, when you combine the intrinsic valuation and the network value, then the network is full and it will not be growing any further. But of course, the innovators or the suppliers of this product would like people to pay a positive price. They will not want to give the product out for free. So if they set a positive price, then there will be a point where the point of critical mass beyond which the market will grow and likely become a sustainable marketplace. Or if the size of the market stays below critical mass, then the product is likely to fail and the network will shrink and disappear. So if we look at the demand curve, the inverted U-shaped demand curve with a positive price P1, that defines the amount of critical mass. So that's where the price line connects with the demand curve. And that's the size of the market beyond which the market must grow in order to become sustainable. So if randomly, by some marketing campaign, the product ends up with N0 number of customers or users, those, even though they are the geeks and they really appreciate the product, but the network is too small and their total valuation, their willingness to pay for the product, will be below the price. That means that the next person is not going to adopt it because their valuation is still below the price, and the network will wither and die away. However, if the initial marketing campaign or some random situation makes the market grow to N1, and N1 number of users will adopt the product initially, then their valuation will be above the price. So their willingness to pay, the next person after N1, their willingness to pay will be above the price P1, and so they will adopt. And the next person's evaluation also will be above the price, and they will adopt, and they will keep growing and growing and growing until they reach the point where P1 equals the demand curve, that is the willingness to pay for the product. So that's why we have three equilibria in this market. One, the ideal equilibrium is where the market will grow beyond critical mass and grow and grow and grow until saturation where price equals the willingness to pay, and that's a stable equilibrium. Another stable equilibrium is where there are 0 users, so you have a positive price and demand never gets beyond critical mass, and the market will collapse. The third equilibrium is unstable. So if you're right at the critical mass, then it's really a hit or miss. A random event can either push the market above and make it grow quite dramatically, or might make it shrink and lose all the users and eventually die away. So the critical mass point is an unstable equilibrium. So that's a very unusual demand situation, and if one innovates a product that has these characteristics, then one really needs to think about how to get that critical mass and get beyond that. And there's the role of expectations is very important here. So when you launch a product and there are zero or few users for the product, then it is very difficult to get a lot of users to adopt because of that valuation problem. So the innovator has to create expectations about the eventual size of the market. So there has to be marketing campaigns, there has to be various kinds of activities to try to convince users to adopt, perhaps working with certain kinds of user groups that might, as a group, be willing to adopt and really enhance those network effects amongst themselves. So creating expectations, managing expectations will be really critical. And if that critical mass is reached, then it's likely that the product will succeed. And possibly, if the network effects are really strong, it's possible that the competing products will then die.